After being reborn, I started to suspect my whole family had been too. It was like they knew the fire that killed me all those years ago was no accident. It was like they knew that the imposter they doted on would one day steal our company's secrets, lock us all in the basement, and torture us to death. Only in their final moments did they realize that I, the one they'd never valued, had been the one trying to hold our broken family together all along. But by then, it was too late, and now they suddenly remembered. Today was the day I was supposed to be kicked out of the Harrison household. Since fate had given them a second chance, this time they would never let me go. Right at that moment, drenched from head to toe, I knocked on the mansion's front door. When the door opened, I saw my father, Robert, and I flinched. Sorry, I'm late." Robert looked at me, and his eyes held a warmth and tenderness I had never seen before. Was I imagining things? Dylan, sitting at the dining table, saw my pathetic state and smirked to himself. Ethan's about to get an earful, but he had no idea that the way everyone else at the table was looking at him was different, too. Robert suddenly spoke. "Go on upstairs and change into something dry." Dylan froze. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Usually, Robert would have yelled at me for being late, then sent me to bed without dinner. Confused but not wanting to push my luck, I just quietly went upstairs. As they watched me go, the eyes of everyone at the table began to well up with tears. Back in the servants' quarters, I changed my clothes but didn't go back downstairs right away. In the past, being late meant no dinner. Even though Robert hadn't yelled at me, I didn't want to go down there and tempt fate. Downstairs, they waited for a while, but I never appeared. Why isn't Ethan coming down? Who does he think he is? Giving us attitude. In front of Dylan, my sister Sophie put on her usual disgusted expression and stormed up the stairs. Watching her furious retreat, Dylan was secretly thrilled, but he kept up his act. Ethan didn't mean to be late, I'm sure. Maybe some of his delinquent friends needed him for something. Robert just grunted in response, saying nothing else. What was wrong with him? Dylan had been looking forward to a show. Oh well, he thought there would be other chances. By the time Sophie reached my door, tears were already streaming down her face. She didn't know how to face the biological brother who, in their past life, had died without ever feeling her love. Hearing the noise outside, I opened my door to find Sophie standing there, her face stained with tears. "What's wrong?" I asked. Sophie wrapped her arms around me in a tight hug. I froze. I had braced myself for one of her usual tirades. Sophie had always hated me more than anyone. Sometimes just calling her by her name would set her off. But now, why was she doing this? "Can you call me Sophie again? Just once." Her request stunned me. "Sophie." Hearing me say her name, Sophie reluctantly let go. "Come on, let's go downstairs and eat." "What are you playing at?" I asked. Ethan." She couldn't just tell me she'd been reborn, could she? But it was true. For the Ethan of this moment, her sudden affection was both a precious gift and a potent poison. "Ethan, don't worry," she said. "I just want you to come eat with us. That's all, I promise." I nodded. It was best not to make Sophie angry. Otherwise, I'd probably be the one who paid for it. When I sat down, I realized no one was scolding me. Usually, even when I was on time, they'd find something to criticize. But tonight, it was as if they had all been waiting for me. None of the food had been touched. What was going on? My mother and sisters kept glancing at me. Just then, Dylan piped up again, trying to stir the pot. "Ethan, did those delinquents get you into trouble again? If they're threatening you, you have to tell Mom and Dad." I frowned. "What are you talking about? When have I ever gotten into trouble with anyone?" Faced with my denial, Dylan sneered internally. "See? Ethan is so easy to provoke. What an idiot. He never learns." Immediately, Dylan's eyes started to redden. What he didn't know was that in the past, seeing his pitiful act would make our mother, Laura, and my eldest sister, Chloe, look at him with sympathy. But now, their eyes held nothing but pure hatred. If they weren't trying to gather evidence against him, they would have torn him apart right then and there. "Ethan, I didn't mean anything by it. Why weren't Mom and my sisters rushing to comfort him?" "I'll look into it," Robert said, his words making Dylan flinch. Shouldn't he be yelling at Ethan first? I shot a surprised look at Robert myself. I had been fully prepared for a lecture, but I never expected him to say that. The meal dragged on, and for the first time in 6 months, I made it through dinner without being yelled at. After dinner, I was about to head back to my room when Robert stopped me. "Hold on, pack your things. I'll have someone prepare the guest room for you tomorrow. You'll be moving in there." I stood there, stunned. What was happening today? Robert was actually giving me a proper room. I'd been living in that cramped servant's room for 6 months. Why the sudden change? Still, I agreed. The news sent Dylan into a silent rage. "Why? Ethan deserved to rot in that servant's room forever. How dare he get a room as good as mine? Back in my room, I stared at my reflection, wondering if this whole day had been a dream. If it was, I hoped I wouldn't wake up for a long time. The next morning, I got up early to catch the bus, but as soon as I opened the front door, my sister Chloe grabbed my arm. "I'll drive you to school," she said, "and starting tomorrow, I'll arrange for a personal driver for you." I was so shocked I couldn't speak, letting Chloe lead me away in a daze. Meanwhile, Dylan had the driver drop him off at an intersection near North Shore High. Once he was sure the car was gone, he slipped down an alley and into a dive bar. "Mr. Vance, what brings you here today? I need you to find a few guys for me, for tonight." "Of course, Mr. Vance. Consider it done." "Who's the unlucky bastard?" "It's not for someone else," Dylan said. "It's for me." The manager stared at him. "I'm sorry, what?" Dylan waved a dismissive hand. "Never mind, you don't need to get it. Just do what I tell you to do." He tossed a debit card onto the bar. "There's $5,000 on there. I'm leaving." As he walked out of the bar, a grin spread across Dylan's face. "Ethan, the show is about to start." And sure enough, when I was leaving school that afternoon, I noticed 4 or 5 guys watching me. The guys themselves were confused. Dylan had paid them to help me bully him. Did the rich kid have some kind of weird kink? I started to walk faster, but then I saw a familiar figure approaching. It was Dylan with a few of his friends. When the thugs saw Dylan, they exchanged a look and then headed my way. "This is the guy, right?" one of them asked before grabbing Dylan by the collar. My eyes widened. What on earth was going on? Dylan's friends, seeing this, immediately pulled out their phones to call the police, but the thugs snatched them away. "You messing with our boy Ethan? You better watch your back." With that, the man and his crew turned to leave. "See ya, Ethan. If this punk bothers you again, just let us know." They had to be the guys Dylan hired. Dylan himself was now sitting limply on the ground, acting as if he was still in shock. A crowd was starting to gather. I tried to leave, but Dylan's friends blocked my path. "Stop right there. Where do you think you're going?" one of them shouted. "You're just the son of a servant, and Dylan is so nice to you he came all the way here to walk you home, and you repay him by hiring thugs to rough him up?" Hearing their accusations, the other students in the crowd started looking at me differently, whispering amongst themselves. Seeing his chance, Dylan got up and stood in front of me. "Ethan, if I did something wrong, please just tell me. I'll change, I promise." His weak, teary-eyed performance completely fooled the onlookers. In their eyes, I was now the villain, the spoiled brat who used his position to bully the kind, legitimate son of the family. The crowd's whispers turned into open insults and jeers. Inside, Dylan was cackling. "I just want to watch Ethan drown in all this hate. Who told him to come back to the Harrison family? This family belongs to me and me alone." A profound sense of helplessness washed over me. Sometimes I wanted to fight back, but I was always overwhelmed. I had to admit, when it came to these games, I was no match for Dylan. And just then, Chloe appeared. As everyone watched in shock, she walked right up to me and took my hand. Ignoring the crowd, ignoring the rumors, ignoring all the hateful words, she simply led me away. Everyone was stunned into silence, including Dylan, who just stood there, frozen. But he quickly recovered, convincing himself that Chloe was just dragging me off to punish me in private. That had to be it. Knowing Chloe, a simple scolding would be getting off easy. As I followed Chloe, I tried to explain. "Those guys, I swear I don't know them. I have no idea why they—" "I know," she cut me off. You really believe me? I don't know what just happened," she said, her voice low. "But fate has given me a second chance, and this time, I'm going to protect you. No one is going to hurt you ever again. As for Dylan, on his birthday, I'm going to personally hand him over to the police. I want him to feel what it's like to fall from grace. And of course, that's not nearly enough. I have many more surprises in store for him." Just then, Chloe's phone rang. It was our other sister, Olivia. "Chloe, where did you take Ethan? Why aren't you home yet?" "I'm taking him out to dinner," Chloe replied. "And then we're going shopping for some new clothes for him." "I'm coming too. You can't have him all to yourself. Text me the address." Chloe sighed and, having no other choice, sent Olivia their location. Meanwhile, Dylan was already planning how he would twist the story to frame me, especially since Chloe had been there to witness it. As he opened the front door to the mansion, he ran right into Sophie and Olivia, who were on their way out. "Olivia, Sophie, where are you two going?" he asked. "We have some errands to run. Don't worry about us. Just head inside," Olivia said. Without another word, the two of them left. Dylan watched them go, feeling that something was a little off. When he got back to the house, Robert lowered his newspaper from the sofa and said flatly, "You're back. let's have dinner. As they sat down at the table, Dylan realized there were only 3 of them. Isn't Ethan back yet? He asked. At his question, Robert and Laura both paused for a fraction of a second before schooling their features. Don't worry about him, Robert said. Chloe took him somewhere, Dylan said, his voice trembling. Dad, can you please tell her not to be too hard on him? I don't mind what he did. As he spoke, a few tears rolled down his cheeks, and Robert and Laura had to fight to keep their composure. His acting was truly impressive, but Laura played her part, rushing to his side with a look of concern. Dylan, what is it? Did Ethan bully you again? Under Robert and Laura's insistent questioning, Dylan reluctantly recounted my supposed crimes against him. Robert slammed his fork down on the table with a loud crack. That's outrageous. He then picked up his phone and dialed Chloe's number. Chloe, you give that boy a piece of your mind, do you hear me? I know, Dad. Don't worry, Chloe said into the phone. He's completely out of control. I'll make sure he learns his lesson. Then she hung up and turned to me. Ethan, just pretend you didn't hear that. When the time is right, I'll explain everything. For now, just listen to me and eat. Hearing this, Dylan was secretly overjoyed, but he kept up his worried facade. Ethan really didn't mean it. I'm sure he was just confused. Robert waved a hand. Don't make excuses for him. Your sister will handle that brat. In the entire Harrison household, only Dylan was still in the dark. He wondered, is Ethan being punished right now? Did Chloe actually hit him? Is he bruised and bleeding? I wish I could see him right now. Robert watched Dylan's pathetic act, unfazed. It wouldn't be long now. Soon, he would expose Dylan's biological parents and have them sent to prison right in front of him. Let's see how long he can keep up the act then, Robert thought. Meanwhile, the person Dylan imagined was being punished was sitting comfortably beside Chloe at a restaurant. Just then, 2 more figures arrived. My other sisters, Olivia and Sophie. As the food arrived, the 3 of them exchanged a look, and my plate was suddenly piled high with food. Eat up, Sophie urged. Seeing that she was losing out to the other 2, she picked up a piece of steak and held it to my lips. With so many people around, I felt too awkward to accept. But Sophie wasn't discouraged. 1 bite at a time, 1 step at a time. After dinner, I had planned to go straight home, but my 3 sisters dragged me to the mall instead. While Chloe was picking out some shirts for me, her phone rang. The caller ID showed Dylan's name. She took a breath, composed herself, and answered. What is it, Dylan? She asked. Is Ethan there? Please don't be too hard on him, Chloe. I've already forgiven him. You don't need to make excuses for him. I know what to do. I'll teach him a lesson he won't forget, Chloe said, her voice laced with ice. The next moment, however, as I stepped out of the fitting room, her face instantly softened into a warm smile. That looks great, but maybe a little too formal. Why don't you try this other one? As I went back into the fitting room, she raised the phone to her ear again. Chloe, what was that noise? Dylan asked. It's nothing, she snapped. Just me teaching Ethan a lesson. He's still not showing any remorse. Dylan smirked, but his smile wouldn't last long, because at that very moment, Robert had just received a call from his investigator with the location of Dylan's biological parents. The next morning, I headed out to catch the bus as usual, but as soon as I stepped outside, I saw a black sedan parked at the curb. Mr. Harrison, please get in, a uniformed driver said, respectfully holding the door open for me. At the same time, Robert, along with 4 or 5 bodyguards, arrived at the apartment of Dylan's biological father, Frank Vance. Frank was in the middle of a poker game with several heavily tattooed men, the very human traffickers he'd worked with for years. Frankie, one of them said, don't worry, you'll get your cut from that last batch of kids. Hey, whatever you think is fair, boss, Frank said with a greasy, fawning smile. He thought to himself, the smartest thing I ever did was swapping my kid with that rich family's baby. Now I don't have to lift a finger, and my dear son sends me over 10 grand a month. Life couldn't be better. I heard they recently found their real son, and for a minute I was worried they'd kick my boy out. But it turns out the Harrisons are a bunch of idiots. They actually treat their own flesh and blood like dirt. It's hilarious. I never thought the kid would survive after I dumped him at that orphanage. If it wasn't illegal, I would have sold him off years ago. But Dylan and I already have a plan. We're going to arrange a little accidental fire to get rid of him for good. Then, the entire Harrison fortune will be ours for the taking. Just as Frank was lost in his fantasy, a hand clamped down on his shoulder. He turned to see Robert Harrison standing behind him, his expression like ice. His poker buddies were already pinned to the ground by Robert's bodyguards. When school let out that afternoon, Dylan was waiting for me at the gate. All right, no one else is around, I said. You can drop the act. Ethan, what are you talking about? I just came to walk you home. He was thinking Ethan has to take the bus home every day. This is the perfect chance to humiliate him. The next second, however, the black sedan pulled up to the curb in front of us. "Mr. Harrison, please get in," the driver said, getting out to open my door. As Dylan stared in disbelief, I got into the car and left him standing there, his fists clenched and his eyes burning with hatred. When I got home, I found the whole family gathered in the living room. I said a quick hello and was about to head upstairs when Olivia stopped me. "Didn't you promise you'd come to my art studio with me today?" she asked. I blinked. "I did. Of course you did. Would I lie to you?" Before I could answer, Olivia was already pulling me towards the door. But Sophie wasn't having it. "No way. Today Ethan is supposed to come with me to my voice lesson." She grabbed my other arm, trying to pull me back. "I'm the older sister, so he's coming with me," Olivia retorted. "And I'm the younger sister, so you should let me have my way." Sophie shot back. "Let go." Stuck between them, I still couldn't process what was happening. Finally, our mother Laura intervened. "Let Ethan decide for himself." Instantly, both of them were at my side, one on each arm. "Ethan, you'll pick me, right?" Olivia asked, looking at me with wide, pleading eyes. I was about to give in when Sophie tugged on my arm. "Don't listen to her, Ethan. I'll take you for a voice lesson, and you can become a huge star, just like me." You forgot about all the candy I used to sneak you when we were kids?" Olivia sputtered. "Ancient history," Sophie declared. "So what's it going to be?" Seeing they were about to start fighting again, I quickly jumped in. "I have homework to do today. How about we figure it out tomorrow?" That seemed to satisfy them for now. Just then, Dylan walked in. Everyone turned to look at him, and the air in the room grew thick with tension. Robert walked over to Dylan. "Dylan, this weekend you're coming with me to the courthouse. It's time you saw how the world really works." At his words, Dylan's eyes lit up with a surprise he could barely contain. Robert had never even made such an offer to Chloe when she was in high school. This meant Robert valued him. It meant Robert was grooming him to be the Harrison family heir. "Okay, Dad, I understand," he said, trying to sound composed, but the delight was written all over his face. Robert watched him with a neutral expression. He hoped Dylan would still be smiling when he saw who was on trial. As Dylan walked past me, he shot me a triumphant, mocking smirk. So what if Ethan was the real son? In the end, the Harrison family would still be his. The next morning, I started to get up for school before remembering it was Saturday. Just then, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Dylan, dressed in a suit. "Ethan, today Dad is taking me to the courthouse." Before he could finish, I slammed the door shut. Dylan stared at the closed door and sneered. I just wanted to see him angry. My work here is done. After Robert and Dylan left, the house fell quiet once more. Since I had some free time, I decided to go for a walk. But when I opened my door, Sophie was standing there. "What are you?" I started to ask. "Didn't we agree I was going to give you a voice lesson today?" Before I could reply, the world started to spin. My legs gave out and I collapsed. As I lay unconscious, a long-lost memory flooded my mind, a memory that ended in a blazing inferno. At that same moment, Dylan was arriving at the Chicago courthouse with Robert. "Dylan, I want you to take notes during the trial," Robert said. "Afterward, you're going to tell me what you learned." "Yes, Dad, I understand." Robert watched him, a faint smirk playing on his lips. Let's see if the bastard is still this excited in an hour. Once they were seated in the gallery, the trial began. The police had managed to get one of the traffickers to flip, revealing the location of the entire Chicago trafficking ring's headquarters. The subsequent raid had taken down the whole operation. This was 6 months earlier than it had happened in the past life, meaning countless more children had been saved. As the defendants were led into the courtroom, dozens of reporters began scribbling in their notebooks. This was a major story for the city. Dylan picked up his pen, ready to take notes. But as the last defendant was brought before the judge, his pupils contracted. The man was his biological father, Frank Vance. Dylan froze, all the strength draining from his body. Robert, of course, noticed his reaction and sneered internally. "What's wrong?" he asked. I'm fine," Dylan managed to say, struggling to keep his voice steady. "Then pay attention and take your notes," Robert said, turning away and giving him space. Seeing that Robert didn't seem suspicious, Dylan breathed a silent sigh of relief. It seemed Robert had no idea that the man on the stand was his real father. That made sense. If Robert knew, he would have exploded with rage. He certainly wouldn't have brought him here. It had to be a coincidence. Still, watching his handcuffed father on the stand, Dylan's mind was a whirlwind of emotions, but he couldn't let any of it show on his face. When the trial concluded, and he heard his father, Frank Vance, sentenced to 10 years in prison, Dylan nearly snapped the pen in his hand. As he walked out of the courtroom, his legs felt weak. "Are you all right? You don't look well," Robert said, feigning concern. "No, I'm fine. Just a little stiff from sitting so long." Robert didn't press the issue. It wasn't time to reveal his hand just yet. On Dylan's birthday, I'll give him a surprise he'll never forget, Robert thought. "So, what did you think of the trial?" I think," Dylan stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. "We'll discuss it when we get back. Just have your notes ready for me. Don't disappoint me." Meanwhile, I was slowly waking up in a hospital bed. The memory of the fire that had consumed everything was still vivid in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling of terror. But now I finally understood. I understood why my family had been acting so differently. Chloe, Olivia, and Sophie were crowded around my bed, their faces etched with worry. "Ethan, you're awake. The doctors couldn't find anything wrong. You scared us half to death." I sat up and shook my head. "I'm fine, but I need to talk to you. You're all different now, aren't you?" Ethan, what are you talking about?" "I don't understand," Sophie stammered, her eyes wide with panic. Seeing her reaction, I knew I was right. "While I was unconscious, I had a long dream," I said. "And in that dream, the boy wasn't as lucky as I was. He died in a fire." My words hung in the air, and I could see in their faces that they understood. I knew everything. "If you're only being nice to me out of guilt, then don't bother," I said. "You don't owe me anything." Chloe's eyes welled with tears. "You're right, Ethan. We do owe you. We owe you more than we can ever repay. But please just give us some time. I'll prove to you that this time, it's real." Seeing the earnest look on her face, I nodded. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered. At that moment, Dylan was arriving back at the Harrison house. That was too close, he thought. Luckily, Robert didn't suspect a thing. I can't wait any longer. I have to get Ethan out of this house for good. He tiptoed into Chloe's room and took her favorite necklace from her jewelry box. Then he slipped into my new room. Seeing the luxurious furnishings, just as nice as his own, sent him into a blind rage. Why does Ethan get to live in a room like this? He should be rotting in the servants' quarters for the rest of his life. A vicious look crossed his face as he shoved the necklace under my mattress. Soon, Ethan will be right back where he belongs. He'd already bribed the security guard to erase the camera footage. This time, there was no way he could fail. When I got home from the hospital, Dylan was waiting for me in the living room. "Ethan, what happened to you? Did you get into a fight with those delinquent friends of yours?" I ignored him and headed for the stairs. "You know, Ethan, Dad took me to the courthouse today," he said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "He said he has high hopes for me." "Oh, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot that you're his real son. My mistake." I was so tired of his act. I sighed, and then I slapped him, hard, across the face. The sharp crack of the slap echoed through the room, and Dylan's cheek immediately turned red. You hit me. "Why shouldn't I?" I retorted. "I've been wanting to do that for a long time. I was fooled by your hypocritical act before, and I didn't want to cause trouble for the family, so I let it slide. In my last life, I didn't understand what was happening until I was burning alive. But not this time. This time, you get what you deserve." Just then, Chloe and my other sisters walked in, having just gotten home themselves. The moment Dylan saw them, his face crumpled into a mask of victimhood. "What's going on?" Chloe asked, rushing forward. She positioned herself between us, seemingly to protect Dylan, but I knew she was really shielding me. Dylan clutched his red cheek, his eyes wide and tearful, the picture of innocence. "Did Ethan bully you again?" Chloe asked him. No, I'm going to check the security cameras," Chloe declared. "Don't worry, Dylan. I'll get to the bottom of this." Chloe laughed to herself. She remembered this day well. This was the day Dylan was supposed to frame me for stealing her necklace. Would he dare let her check the cameras? Not a chance. The footage was probably already gone. And sure enough, at the mention of the security cameras, Dylan flinched. If she checked the footage now, she'd see something was wrong, and his plan to frame me would be ruined. "Wait," Dylan said, blocking Chloe's path. "Actually, I just tripped. It had nothing to do with Ethan, really." "Dylan, even now you're still defending him?" Chloe asked, her voice full of fake disappointment. "It's true, Chloe. Don't you believe me?" Chloe didn't push it. Seeing her back down, Dylan breathed a silent sigh of relief. He shot a look at my back, a cold, cruel smile playing on his lips. "Just wait, Ethan. Let's see how smug you are in a little while." Back in my room, I had just started to unpack when Chloe slipped inside. After a moment of searching, she pulled the necklace out from under my mattress. Ethan, just pretend you don't know anything about this, she whispered. Leave the rest to me. With that, she was gone. A few minutes later, there was another knock. It was Dylan. Ethan, have you seen Chloe's favorite necklace? I think I saw you near her room earlier. Standing right behind him was Chloe, her expression grim. What Dylan didn't know was that Chloe had already slipped the necklace into his own pocket. Dylan, are you sure you saw Ethan go into my room? Chloe asked. Dylan shot a timid glance in my direction, as if he was afraid I would attack him for telling the truth. Don't be afraid, Chloe said. I'm here. Ethan won't hurt you. I was starting to understand what Chloe was up to, so I leaned against the doorframe and watched Dylan's little show. Ethan, I think I saw you take something, he mumbled, before hiding behind Chloe. You're sure you saw him? She pressed. Dylan started to panic. What was going on? Why was Ethan so calm? Shouldn't he be furious? But he'd come too far to back down now. Ethan, that necklace is really important to Chloe, he said, managing to squeeze out a few tears. Go ahead and search, I said. But if you don't find anything, don't expect me to be nice about it. Hearing me agree to the search, Dylan's heart leaped. The idiot. Did he really think I'd try to frame him without a solid plan? How naive. I leaned against the doorframe and watched him, a slight smile on my face. He put on a good show, pretending to search the room, before accidentally slipping and falling near my bed. A triumphant smirk flickered across his face as he reached under the mattress. Let's see you talk your way out of this one, Ethan. But as he reached for the spot where he'd hidden the necklace, his hand closed on empty air. He froze, then, thinking he must have misplaced it, he stuck his head under the bed to get a better look. His heart sank. There was nothing there. Well, did you find it? I asked, walking over to him. I was itching to get my hands on him. This is impossible. So, is it there or not? Dylan was speechless. He had no choice but to admit defeat. He slowly crawled out from under the bed. I'm sorry, Ethan. It was my mistake. I was wrong. You can punish me, he said, his eyes welling up with tears. As long as Chloe was here, Ethan wouldn't dare touch him, no matter how wronged he felt. He'd used this trick countless times. But before he could finish his thought, the sharp sound of a slap echoed through the room, and Dylan stared at me, stunned. Before he could speak, I slapped him again. He was genuinely panicking now. Ethan was hitting him, right in front of Chloe. That's enough. What are you doing? Chloe finally shouted, after I'd gotten my fill, and she pulled Dylan away. I'm sorry, Ethan. It's all my fault. I deserved that, Dylan sobbed. I pointed at his pocket with a look of feigned surprise. Dylan's eyes followed my finger, and the next second, he froze as if he'd been struck by lightning. Sticking out of his pocket was the very necklace he'd been looking for. Chloe, acting as if she'd just noticed, walked over to him and pulled it out. Seeing the complicated look in Chloe's eyes, Dylan started to panic. I don't know how that got there. Dylan, Chloe said, her voice full of disappointment. If you wanted something, you could have just asked. She patted him on the shoulder, then turned and walked downstairs, a look of sadness on her face. Ethan, what did you do? He hissed. Done with the act? Weren't you just calling me your dear brother a minute ago? Ethan, don't think your little tricks can change anything. This family will be mine one day. Late that night, long after the lights in the Harrison mansion had gone out, Dylan crept out of his room. He tiptoed to the kitchen, loosened the valve on the gas line, and then began pouring cooking oil all over the floor. He took out a lighter, his eyes gleaming with a sick, manic light, and lit a dry rag. Enjoy your present, Ethan. He dropped the burning rag, and the flames began to spread. Satisfied, Dylan hurried back to his room. What he didn't know was that his every move had been recorded by a tiny hidden camera. He also didn't know that Chloe had already taken me away from the house. In fact, he was the only one left inside. He settled in to wait for his sisters to come and rescue him. Outside the mansion, Robert and the rest of the family were starting to sense that something was wrong. Where's Chloe? Laura asked. Her words sent a jolt of fear through me. I suddenly realized what she was planning to do, and I took off, sprinting towards the house. They watched, stunned, as I ran towards the burning building, but they couldn't keep up. I ignored their shouts, my mind racing. I knew what Chloe was about to do. I couldn't let her throw her life away for that monster. And sure enough, there she was, standing in front of Dylan's door. She calmly took out a key and inserted it into the lock. What he'd done to us wasn't enough. This was not nearly enough. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held a terrifying, manic gleam. Just as she was about to turn the key, I reached her and grabbed her in a hug. Chloe, please don't do this, I begged. He's not worth throwing your life away. Let me go, Ethan, she said, her voice dangerously calm. Get out of here. I don't care what happens to me. But have you thought about Dad? About Mom? About Olivia and Sophie? And what about me? Have you considered me? My words made her pause, her hand hovering over the key. If she got caught, what would that do to our family? Would Ethan have to live with the shame of having a murderer for a sister? Would our parents ever be able to hold their heads high again? Was it really worth it all for that monster? Come with me, I pleaded. Just then, the door swung open. Dylan had been waiting, but no one had come. He couldn't wait any longer. If he didn't get out now, he would die. But when he saw us standing there, hugging, and the key in his door, he froze. Even he was smart enough to realize that the jig was up. Fine, he snarled, dropping the act. Since you all know, then don't blame me for what happens next. He shoved us both into the room, slammed the door, and snapped the key off in the lock. Go to hell, he screamed. The thought that they had all been playing him for a fool made him want to kill them all. He would make them all die here together. Then he would still be the sole heir to Harrison Industries. The entire Harrison fortune would still be his. He ran, wild and unthinking, towards the kitchen, ignoring the thick smoke. He was a cornered animal, and he was going to bring the whole house down with him. I realized how serious the situation was and started kicking at the locked door with all my strength. But the doors were solid oak, and I could barely make a dent. I'm sorry, Chloe sobbed. This is all my fault. I shouldn't have come back. It's not your fault, I said. It's mine. I underestimated him. My eyes fell on the large picture window. If we can't get through the door, we'll go through the window. I grabbed a heavy vase and hurled it at the glass. The vase shattered, but the window only cracked. I didn't give up. I grabbed a chair and swung it with all my might. With a loud crack, the glass finally gave way, leaving a hole big enough to climb through. Quick! Grab my hand and jump, I yelled. At that same moment, Dylan reached the main gas valve. He was completely unhinged, his face a mask of pure madness. Everything the Harrisons have is mine, mine, mine. And then a brilliant flash of white light. In the instant before the light consumed him, what was Dylan thinking? Was it regret? Did he regret his foolishness? Regret opening the gas valve? Or was it hate? Did he hate me for coming back, for intruding on his life? Or was it, perhaps, a final sense of release? And then, in a final, fleeting moment of clarity, he remembered the day he first met me. He remembered the fear, the terror that they would cast him aside like garbage now that their real son was back. And so he had lied, and schemed, and done everything in his power to make my life a living hell. My pain was his pleasure, his comfort, his joy. Somewhere along the way, without him even realizing it, he had become a monster. Shameless, hypocritical, disgusting, and greedy. He couldn't stand to see me receive even the smallest scrap of affection. Looking back now, he saw himself for what he was. A rabid dog. Pathetic, miserable fool. All that love he had craved, it had never been his to begin with. It was always meant for me. He was the intruder, the cuckoo in the nest. But none of that mattered anymore. This was the end he deserved. Finally, he could rest. No more scheming, no more lies. In the next life, maybe he could be a good person. And then, the brilliant white light consumed everything. No! Robert and the others had just reached the house when a deafening roar tore through the night. The shockwave hit them like a tidal wave, knocking Robert off his feet. The Harrison mansion collapsed in on itself, reduced to a mountain of rubble. Olivia stared at the ruins, her mouth agape, her eyes vacant. Chloe! Ethan! Sophie screamed, completely breaking down. She ran into the wreckage, clawing at the debris with her bare hands. Ethan, come out. Please, come out. A sharp pain shot through Robert's chest, and he coughed up blood. Laura just stood there, staring at the ruins, a lifeless statue. This is a dream, she told herself. It has to be a dream. When I wake up, everything will be back to normal. Just then, with a final, desperate roar, I kicked away the heavy wardrobe that had pinned me down. Everyone's heads snapped in my direction, and they ran towards me as if their lives depended on it. The blast had originated on the other side of the house, and the sturdy construction, along with the heavy wardrobe, had shielded us from the worst of it. Otherwise, even jumping from the window wouldn't have saved us. Call an ambulance, I yelled. Chloe's passed out. Chloe hadn't been as lucky as me. The shockwave had thrown her into a thicket of bushes. If not for that, she would have been much more seriously injured. As the paramedics wheeled her into the operating room, I finally allowed myself to breathe. Just as my family rushed towards me, I couldn't hold on any longer. The world went black. When I woke up, the first thing I saw was a sterile white ceiling. The first thing I smelled was antiseptic. I had survived, and this time I wasn't alone. The doctor said I was fine, just some bruises and a mild concussion. They wanted to keep me for observation for a couple of days. What about Chloe? I asked. She's still in surgery. Broken bones, a bruised lung, but she's going to make it. You saved her. I closed my eyes, a lump forming in my throat. The light above the operating room door finally went out at 3 in the morning. They wheeled Chloe out, a trickle of blood at the corner of her mouth, her face pale, but her breathing was steady. They took her to the ICU. Olivia collapsed to the floor, sobbing into her hands. Sophie pulled her to her feet, her own sobs choked and quiet. As long as she was alive, there was hope. The next morning, the police came to my room. The lead detective placed a clear plastic evidence bag on my bedside table. Inside was a tiny camera, no bigger than a toy. Who planted this? He asked. All eyes turned to my mother, Laura. She bit her lip, then nodded. I did. A week ago. Dylan was watching the main security feed too closely. This is one he wouldn't have known about. The detective summarized their findings. The gas valve in the mansion was opened all the way. Cooking oil was used as an accelerant. After the fire started, the lock on one of the bedroom doors was broken from the outside. We found the head of a key in the rubble that matches the break. The video confirms Dylan Vance's actions. He didn't make it out. The blast from the kitchen would have killed him instantly. The detective paused, then looked at me. You're the victims here. Don't worry. The law will see that justice is done. 2 weeks later, Chloe was moved from the ICU to a regular room. I pushed open her door to find her propped up in bed, her right arm in a cast, but her eyes were as defiant as ever. She stared at me for a long moment, and then her eyes started to well up. How about you chew me out? We can call it a peace offering. I smiled. Only if you mean it. I mean it, she said, her voice fierce. From now on, if anyone so much as lays a finger on you, I'll tear them apart. This was the Chloe I knew. The sharp edges forged by a lifetime of regret were still there, but now, finally, they were pointed in the right direction.